Returned to Texas to earn degrees in international trade at Texas A&M University, a law degree from UT Austin, and a PhD in government from UT Austin. Today, he's the most degreed congressman serving in the House with 5 advanced degrees. I understand that's sort of controversial today, but we appreciate your commitment to education. Congressman Cuellar also holds a 3rd degree black belt in karate, so I guess that's education. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, you're right. The match just came out. The way I understand it. Originally, when I first ran in District 28. District 28 was the one that was created by the late Frank Tejeda. At that time, it had 285,000 people. Then, after the 2006 redistricting, it went down to 14,500, and as of a few minutes ago, I guess it's up to 160,000, a little bit under less than 160,000. So Southeast San Antonio, all the way to East San Antonio up to 35, all will be there. My office is there at the Garcia building right next to the Alamo, and I just told my chief of staff, you don't have to move anymore. You can stay where you're at. So again, I look forward to working with you a lot closer. Pretty much, I guess I got about 100% of what we have requested. I wanted to have McAllen, the area down there, all of Webb County, small counties in between, and then ask for 158,000 plus. And Bexar County is what looks like the court just gave us there. And again, it's one of those things that I look forward. Somebody asked me, a reporter asked me in San Antonio, you were actually looking for more of San Antonio? Yes, I was, because the 28 has been part of the, or should I say, Bexar County has been part of the 28 for many years, so that's what we want to do. Let me just talk about a couple of things, and then let me say that I really appreciate y'all coming up here. I think when you involve the city, the county, the chamber, Richard, it's always a pleasure seeing you, and the other folks coming in, it's important for us to sit down with you, hear you, talk about the different issues, especially right now where things are very difficult up here in Washington. You know, think about this. Highway bill in the past has been a very bipartisan, rather simple bill to pass in the past. This time, as you know, our majority friends are having trouble trying to pass that. The Import-Export Bank, the reauthorization in the past has been one of those easy bills that have been reauthorized, and as you know, they're still having trouble with that. And I just met with Boeing, Caterpillar, and a whole bunch of folks this morning. Of course, a lot of folks are very interested on this because this will help us export more itself. The Farm Bill, which not only for our farmers, but for our food banks, for our school lunches, has been a bipartisan, easy bill to pass. But under the environment that we have right now, it's again having trouble being put together. And I say this because we're in a very, very interesting times that we are right now. And part of this is, as we look at the work that you're doing, it's important to get the right information. And I think as a former small business owner, just like a lot of y'all, it's important to see what we're facing right now. And a lot of times there's misinformation out there. And I'm the type that I like to look at the problem, look at the facts, and try to put aside the misinformation and then say, how do we address those issues? So let me give you a couple of things. Let's talk about energy independence. And as you know, the Eagle Ford has been very, very good for San Antonio. My district, there's a lot of counties there that used to be very rural. They're still rural, but now there's a lot of activity. In 2008, there were 26 rigs. Now there's over 3,000 rigs that have been established there. And the resources, the income coming in, has just been tremendous. And it's only, if you talk to some of those old companies, it's not for the next 5-10 years. They're literally for the next 40-50 years. So the Eagle Ford is going to be very, very important to San Antonio, and certainly Webb County, my area, the part of San Antonio that I represent is going to be very, very good in the counties in between. But one of the things that we talk about is you hear a lot of people talk about energy independence. Now, I think all of us would agree that energy independence means that we rely less on import oil, right? Is that what we mean by energy independence? We rely less on import. And I think also you would agree that having a net petroleum imports less than the the independence. That is, if we want independence, we want to have less imports on this. Well, let me look at some of the facts, and I say this because sometimes people put out misinformation. In 2005, the oil imports that we had, and that was a different president. I don't want to get into Bush or Obama. Let me just give you, I think you know who was president and who was not president at that time. In 2005, the imports that we consumed in the United States were 60%. That is, of all the consumption we had, 60% of the energy were from imports. In 2010, it went down to 49%. And just today, right now, oil imports make up 36%. So that means, as we talk about interdependence, that means that we're actually importing less oil, too much in my opinion, but still we're importing from 60% down to 36%. So we're importing less oil than we have. When you look at actually the prior administration, because he's a friend of mine, I won't use his name, the prior administration, actually oil production went down 15%. And under the present administration, from 2008 to 2010, oil production has gone up 11%. And again, those are from studies and so, not numbers that I put in there again. So I say this because for the first time in December of 2011, we actually became a net exporter of petroleum products, with gasoline or jet fuel, for the first time in 62 years. For the first time in 62 years, we actually became a net exporter of petroleum. And I say this because basically two things have happened. One is we have produced a lot more domestically, and that's good, and I want to see more production. I believe in offshore drilling. I believe in ANWR drilling. I think we can do ANWR also. Actually, ANWR, if you look at it, if you put a stamp, a postage stamp in the middle of a football field, that's what we're talking about when we talk about even ANWR. But that's become a symbol where different folks have been for and against it itself there. And the other fact is simply because we've been able to also get more efficiency from whether it's companies or cars, and therefore you see that we're importing less than that. The other thing is we hear, well, taxes are too high. And I think you know my record. I voted for the George Bush tax cuts, extensions, largest tax cuts that we have in Texas. But again, misconceptions out there that people just sometimes hear something, they repeat that. Actually, if you look at the taxes, these are the lowest tax rates that we've had since the 1950s, since the Truman administration. When you look at federal tax, local taxes, income tax, property tax, sales tax, and all that, the percentage of personal income that's paid in taxes is the lowest in 62 years. Federal tax receipts alone in 2011 were projected at 14.8% of the GDP. In contrast, the prior administration, it was 17.5% of the GDP. So they're actually lower for different reasons. Also, and I believe that we ought to lower the tax rate for corporate taxes so we can go ahead and compete. But let me give you some figures also. The U.S. corporate tax rate is now at the lowest we've seen in 40 years. It's actually, when you combine it all together, it's at 12.1%. 12.1%, which is the lowest we've had effective rate since 1972. When you look at it from 1987 to 2008, actually the average that companies paid were 25.6%. And again, different reasons. I think we saw the bonus depreciation that saved companies $55 billion and other write-offs, investment write-offs, which are the right things to do. Do we have to look at making some changes to the tax code? Yes, we do. And in fact, if you look at it, we are going to have the perfect storm, and I'll finish one more example of misinformation out there, and then we'll talk about what I call the perfect storm that will be coming at the end of the year. The other thing is too many regulations out there, and I agree. We hear that from bankers, we hear that from other folks, and again, I support it to reduce the unnecessary rules and regulations. In fact, I just voted to reduce some regulations on higher ed a few minutes ago. But again, if you look at the prior administration compared to this one, the present administration has actually written 5% less rules than the prior administration. at this particular time. Now, if the rules are affecting you, then they're the worst rules that you've seen here. And I say this because you have to look at what the facts are instead of the misinformation that we get out there. Government is getting too big itself, and I've heard that so many places. And let's look at the federal workforce itself. If you look at the federal workforce compared to the overall population, that has dropped steadily since the 1960s. In fact, in 1962, the total number of federal personnel we had was 5.3 million. In 2010, last year, it was 4.4 million. If you look at the executive branch, not the total, just the executive branch, it's the lowest we've had since 1943. And I say that because if you look at pure numbers, and the biggest growth that we've had in the executive branch has been in the military and Homeland Security itself there. So again, I say that because I'm on your side. But when we look at things, we got to make sure that we don't base our decisions on misinformation out there. And I like to look at facts and give it the best analysis. If you look at the way San Antonio has been growing, San Antonio has been doing a great job. If you look at the study that just came out, San Antonio is to be one of the fastest growing percentage-wise for jobs. I think Laredo's #1, San Antonio was up there in the top 10, McAllen was in the top 5. So in my district, I got 3 of the fastest job creators in the whole country. McAllen, Laredo, and San Antonio itself. So I say this because even though we still need a lot more work to do, and I certainly want to work with you, and I think I've been very pro-business in working with you. We still have to look at the work that we have to do, but I'm one of those that I like to look at facts and make sure we don't base it on misinformation and then go on what we need to do. Do we have work to do? Yes. For example, if you look at the perfect storm, and this is where a lot of us are going to spend a lot of time. At the end of this year, there's a couple things that are going to happen. You're going to see the payroll tax extenders that we just passed. By the way, the majority had said that they didn't want to add any more to the deficit, but they caved in and added $83 billion to the deficit when they said we're not going to add any more to the deficit. But at the end of the year, we are going to have the payroll tax that's going to expire, #1. You're going to have the George Bush tax cuts, a lot of them that are going to expire. Then you have the sequestration, the $1.2 trillion sequestration, that now people are starting to come back and say, Pinks, when we say cut across the board, we really didn't mean us. Cut somebody else, don't cut us, and we're starting to get already from folks. I mean, if we're going to reduce the deficit, we already cut $1 trillion, at least proposed over the next 10 years. And if we're going to cut another $1.2 trillion, I think what we're going to do, we got to be fair and cut what we need to cut instead of saying, because if you make an exception here, make an exception over here, make another exception here, then after all, why even do the cuts after that? But I say this because at the end of the year, it won't have to be before November of the election, of course, but after the election, that part is going to be very busy because you got tax cut extensions, you got payroll tax cuts that are going to expire. You're going to have the sequestration that are going to come in, and what I call a perfect storm are going to come in. And plus, you have a lot of authorization bills that we need to address now. We need to address, for example, the highway bill. If you want to talk about a job creator, the highway bill is something that will be so important to create. And I don't care, it's maintenance, but I want to see new construction. Just to put enough money just to keep the maintenance, it's not enough. That's good, but we want to see new construction so you can create jobs out there. So there's a lot of reauthorization bills that are coming up, and then plus what I call the tax cut expiration and the sequestration. So I think November and December should be very interesting times for the members of Congress up here. So again, I like to leave it open for any easy questions that you might have. And again, I thank you for being here, and I appreciate you all coming down. We are going to be, forget about little doggy, I'm going to be a bigger, I'm just kidding, I am going to be a bigger landowner than
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
but I look forward to working with you, Tommy, because I got a lot of that, and I want to thank you also for the highway, talking about the 1604, and I know that became an issue, but what we worked on together for that part of your district was very important. I appreciate that, Tom.
Thank you, Congressman. I have a question. What about, would you support an effort to, a process to look at the 12 to 1,300 foreign U.S. military bases to pare them down so that, you know, we've gone through a process here domestically. What's wrong with some appropriate, discrete process?
Yeah, you know, if you look at the process, and I remember I had just become a congressman representing San Antonio, and at that time I was representing 285,000 before they did the redistricting in 2006. We were all afraid of BRAC. And actually, if you recall, we were worried that we were going to be losing out, but actually BRAC turned out to be pretty good for San Antonio. And I think if there's some changes out there, outside the U.S., I really feel that San Antonio will come out as one of the winners if there's some changes on that. So I got Randolph Air Force Base in my district. We'll continue to be part of that. And I think we have to look at what our mission is. And we have to be very specific as to what our mission is. And we have to set exit strategies. And we got to know what we are going to be doing before we try to become one for all. And especially now that the budget, I mean, the budget's tight. I mean, the problem is very simple. We have a $3.5 trillion budget, $2.1 trillion of income comes in. The difference is right there. The difference is right there, the 1.4, 1.2, $3 trillion. And that is the difference there. Now, some folks have said, well, just cut it down. Some of my Tea Party folks said, it's very simple, Henry. Just go ahead and cut it down. Well, if we cut it down just to match the revenue coming in from 3.5 to 2.1, my job, Charlie's or Castro or Canseco, it would be very simple. My job would be, our job would come up here just to check on your Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, that's it, the entitlements. Maybe a little bit of money left. No money for transportation, no money for military, no money for highways, no money for education, no money for healthcare, nothing at all. Except if we would just cut it down. So, do we have to look at additional revenues? First we need to cut, but even Boehner, back in August, when we were talking about the debt ceiling, even he said that he was willing to put $800 billion of revenues out there. He never said what they were. But he did say $800 billion. He said, but the president wants 1.4, so we're too far apart. But even he talked about $800 billion of revenues out there for that. Yes, sir.
What do you see as the future of the Keystone Pipeline and how it will affect manufacturing in the country?
I have supported that. I think the people that voted against it, I think the people that put a hold on it, I think we have studied it enough. And I think we should, as an energy state, we should, as long as we're doing it environmental, and remember, they have been studying that for 3 years already, so it's nothing that just came up from one day to the other day. They have been studying this for 3 years. Now, it's very interesting that the administration now has said, oh, we're going to okay Oklahoma down to Texas. Well, that's good, but if you don't have this first part, how do you get from Canada over to Oklahoma and then to Texas? I mean, Texas would be good for our area. So they gave a preliminary okay, I think just today. That's good, but I supported Keystone, and again, I'm one of those that as long as you do it in an environmental way, you study it, and I think after 3 years of studies, I think that's more than enough time. One easy question. If not, again, I really appreciate y'all being here. I look forward to now representing 158,000 more folks in the Bexar County, and I look forward. And again, what you get from me is a pro-business, conservative, blue dog Democrat. I can work with Lamar. I can work with Pico. I can work with other Democrats also, as long as we keep our number one interest, which is in this case, San Antonio, Texas, then I think we'll be on the same page. Thank you very much.